Hi everybody, it is your weekly legislative update for Friday, March 20th, and very busy week this week in Springfield. We had Lobby Day, which was just fantastic. We had at least 80 people down from Sierra Club and our partners talking to senators and representatives about our priority bills, and we had a really good time and it made a lot of progress. By our count, we had 11 new co-sponsors on our priority bills from those conversations, and a lot of good impressions made. So if you came, thanks so much for coming down. It really made a difference, and it's great to see so many friendly faces in the Capitol. Wish we had that every day. It was a week of progress on most of our bills. We saw we finally now have language on the House version of the carbon cap bill. House Bill 3668 has an amendment that was added on Thursday, and that was essentially what we had planned all along. It's a very detailed amendment that talks about reducing greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050 and giving broad rulemaking authority to the Illinois EPA to implement a market-based program to get there. And we're getting lots of detailed questions about exactly how a carbon auction would work, and the good news is that the legislation really empowers Illinois EPA to address all those very technical questions through rulemaking. That'll have lots of public input. Stakeholders will be heard from, so legislators don't have to fear that IEPA is going to go off and do this in the dark somewhere without any input. They'll have a very inclusive process, and we don't have to address all those very technical questions that Illinois EPA will ultimately have to address. We don't have to address those now here in the legislative process. So House Bill 3668 is no longer a shell bill, and we made some progress towards a Senate vehicle for the carbon cap. It looks like Senator Staines is going to be introducing that probably next week, so by next Friday I hope to have a bill number for you on the Senate version of the carbon cap. Clean cars, we added some co-sponsors in the Senate as a result of Lobby Day. Both in the House and the Senate, we have deadline extensions, so our bills are still alive even though they remain in committee. On the natural gas efficiency side, this is a bill we have only in the House, House Bill 4321, and it is out of committee and very much alive. It's also been wrapped up in a big, there are a lot of other bills that touch upon the gas utility sector, that most of which we don't have a position on, but there's a big negotiation led by the Attorney General's office with the gas utilities, the environmental groups, consumer advocates about all these bills. So we continue to focus on House Bill 4321, and adding co-sponsors to it is a great way to send a message to all the folks negotiating here that this is one piece of all the issues dealing with the gas industry that we really do need to pass this year. So keep up the great work on that one. On building code, energy efficient building code, again, this bill is only in the House. That's House Bill 3897, I believe. Julie Hamus is the sponsor, and that is also very much alive. It is on second reading and could be voted on for by the full House as early as this week. And then finally on the Green Capital Bill, this was obviously the week that Governor Quinn gave his big budget address, and I'm sure you've heard lots of coverage about the proposed tax increases in that plan. On the operating budget side, we think we're still looking at the details, but we think it's generally good news for us. The Department of Natural Resources is one of the few, if not the only agency in Governor Quinn's proposed budget to actually get a slight increase. And for an agency that's really taken so many cuts over the last decade, that's great news. Not certainly going to make it all back this year, but I believe that Governor Quinn has proposed letting them add something on the order of 30 or 35 new staff this year to start to rebuild the DNR's historic strength. On the capital bill that the governor also proposed on Wednesday, the details are really less clear. We're going to have detailed conversations with the relevant state agencies next week to figure out exactly what is in the governor's proposal for the environment. We know some very top line numbers. It's about a $25 or $6 billion overall program. $2 billion of that is identified as being for environmental projects, so that's good to hear that the environment is a component of the bill. and now we just need to really drill down and find out exactly what the bill does on the categories of spending that we're really interested in: open space, clean energy, clean water, toxics cleanups. We just don't know enough to be able to give you a lot of guidance on that. And I think we're going to have time. Governor Quinn has said that he wants to pass this by April 3rd. I think personally it's going to be very hard, and that this is going to be a big debate for the remainder of the session. So I think starting next week, our conversations with legislators about green capital, the feedback that you get from legislators in those discussions is really going to help us gauge what their reaction to Quinn's overall plan is, and how we might best position our message in favor of green capital projects in this sort of new era of the session. And I think the governor's budget address really does mark a new chapter in the session. I don't know if we're around halftime, but certainly the early beginning part of the session is clearly behind us, with both committee deadlines having passed in both the House and the Senate. The governor's budget address has at least set the borders for the initial discussions over the state's both operating capital budgets, and now things really are going to start to get especially serious. So please do go ahead, and if you have not yet been able to get an appointment on your rep or senator's calendar, really try. At this point, you may be looking most likely at the April spring break, but we certainly don't want to let that chance get away from us. If you're not able to see them before that break is over in mid-April, it's going to be pretty tight after that in the last weeks of the session to get on the calendar. So if you haven't been able to crack through on the scheduling yet, try to make that call as soon as you can, because other folks will be wanting to see them during the spring break as well. So keep up the good work. For those of you that came to Springfield this week, I hope you realize exactly how helpful it was. Your feet are probably sore from running up and down all those marble steps, but it really made a difference. And whether you were in town or you've been doing out in the district, thanks for all your work. It is really starting to pay off, and we will talk to you again next week. Thanks. Enjoy the first days of spring.